In the sacred chamber of your heart, have you ever felt that quiet stirring, a subtle knowing that a relationship isn't aligned with your soul's highest path? Those moments when your spirit seems to whisper that a connection once treasured has now become a burden on your spiritual wings. Imagine your soul as a lotus flower, trying to bloom in muddy water that's constantly being stirred. That's what happens to your spirit in relationships that no longer serve your evolution. Just as the lotus needs still, clear water to fully open its petals to the sun, your soul requires energetic clarity to unfold its true potential. Relationships that diminish your light aren't just emotionally challenging, they're energetically depleting. They create spiritual blockages that prevent your energy from flowing freely, keeping you tied to lower vibrational states that hinder your spiritual evolution. The ancient mystery schools of Egypt taught that relationships aren't merely social connections, they're energetic contracts between souls, designed to catalyze growth and awakening. When these contracts have fulfilled their purpose, the soul naturally seeks completion and release. This isn't about labeling someone as toxic, but recognizing when the spiritual purpose of a connection has been fulfilled. In these timeless traditions, relationship transitions weren't viewed as failures, but as sacred completions, necessary passages in the soul's journey toward wholeness. The Vedic sages called this concept samapti, the divine timing of endings that create space for new beginnings. Think about it. How many times have you sensed that inner knowing that something needed to change, yet pushed that wisdom aside, dismissing it as fear or overthinking? What if that voice wasn't doubt at all, but your higher self guiding you toward greater alignment? Modern spiritual teachers often focus only on attraction and manifestation, how to draw in the perfect partner or manifest ideal relationships. Yet the ancient masters knew that the ability to discern when to release connections is equally sacred. They understood that spiritual maturity includes knowing when to let go with grace and compassion. In this video, we'll explore 7 spiritual signs that indicate you're experiencing a profound awakening in how you approach relationships. These aren't just psychological shifts, they're spiritual transformations that signal your soul is evolving in how it connects with others. Ancient wisdom traditions teach us that spiritual growth often requires examining our relationships and discerning which ones support our highest good and which ones may be limiting our expansion. This isn't about placing blame, but about recognizing divine timing in your own awakening journey. Sign 1. Craving meaningful conversation over small talk. The first spiritual sign that you're evolving beyond a toxic relationship is your growing desire for meaningful conversation over superficial interaction. When your consciousness begins to expand, surface-level chit-chat feels increasingly empty and unsatisfying. In toxic relationships, particularly with narcissistic individuals, conversations remain superficial by design. Deep, authentic connection threatens their control. They prefer to keep interactions on their terms, focused on mundane topics, gossip, or their own achievements. This avoids true intimacy that would require vulnerability and authenticity. As your spirit awakens, you'll find yourself hungering for conversations that touch the soul, discussions about purpose, meaning, and genuine emotions. You might notice how conversations with your partner leave you feeling empty rather than fulfilled, as if something essential is missing. This shift represents your soul's natural evolution toward truth and meaning. Ancient spiritual teachings remind us that authentic communication creates bridges between souls. When you crave depth in your connections, it's your higher self recognizing that you deserve relationships that honor your complete being, not just the surface personality, but the deeper essence of who you are. Sign 2. Valuing peace over chaos. The second spiritual sign is when you begin to value peace over chaos. In toxic relationships, chaos isn't accidental, it's methodical. Drama, arguments, and emotional turbulence become weapons to keep you disoriented and depleted. Think of your energy field as a crystal clear pond. When someone constantly throws stones into that pond, the ripples distort your reflection, making it impossible to see yourself clearly. This is the spiritual concept of Maya, or illusion, that ancient Vedic texts describe, the veil that obscures your true divine nature. In chaotic relationship dynamics, the constant emotional turbulence makes it nearly impossible to see your own reflection clearly enough to recognize your power. It's important to note that not all relationship challenges indicate toxicity. In healthy relationships, both partners take responsibility for maintaining calm waters, and occasional storms are navigated together rather than created by one to control the other. The difference lies in intention and pattern. Is the chaos a tool for growth or a weapon for control? When your spirit begins to awaken, you'll notice how physically uncomfortable persistent chaos becomes. Arguments that once felt like passionate engagement now leave you feeling energetically violated. The dramatic highs and lows that initially seemed like intensity now reveal themselves as manipulation techniques rather than natural relationship fluctuations. Peace becomes not just a preference, but a spiritual necessity. Your energetic system is literally rejecting lower vibrational patterns as it realigns with your true nature, which is harmonious and balanced. This isn't about avoiding necessary conflict. It's about distinguishing between productive discussions and manufactured chaos designed to keep you spiritually disoriented. Sign 3. Choosing alignment over approval. The third spiritual sign is prioritizing inner alignment over external approval. Toxic relationships, especially with narcissistic individuals, create a dependency on their validation. Their approval becomes the currency of your worth, sometimes lavishly given, other times cruelly withheld. This devaluation process is subtle but devastating. As one post described, suddenly the warmth fades. The compliments turn into criticism. You feel like you're walking on eggshells. This creates a spiritual dissonance where your self-worth becomes externally determined. Spiritual awakening reverses this pattern. You begin to recognize that true worth comes from alignment with your higher self, not from another's approval. You start feeling the disconnect between your soul's wisdom and the conditional acceptance offered in the relationship. This represents your spirit, remembering its divine nature, one that requires no external validation to know its worth. You may find yourself caring less about impressing your partner and more about honoring your truth. This isn't selfishness, it's spiritual authenticity, recognizing that your soul's purpose isn't to gain approval, but to express its unique light. Sign 4. Setting boundaries over people-pleasing. The fourth spiritual sign is the emergence of healthy boundaries. Spiritually, boundaries aren't walls. They're sacred thresholds that honor both your energy and others. In toxic relationships, especially with manipulative partners, these boundaries are systematically violated. When you attempt to establish limits, you're met with guilt, criticism, or accusations of selfishness. As one post noted, instead of attacking you, they make you feel guilty for setting boundaries. This emotional manipulation keeps you accessible and available to fulfill their needs while neglecting your own. As your consciousness expands, you begin to understand boundaries as spiritual self-care, not selfishness. You recognize that your energy is sacred and deserves protection. Setting boundaries becomes an act of self-love rather than a defensive measure. This spiritual awakening often manifests as a growing discomfort with people-pleasing behaviors you once engaged in automatically. You start honoring your no as much as your yes, understanding that both are expressions of your authentic truth. This isn't about controlling others, but about taking responsibility for your own energetic well-being. Sign 5. Trusting intuition over logic. The fifth spiritual sign is returning to your intuitive wisdom. One of the most spiritually damaging aspects of truly toxic relationships is gaslighting, the systematic dismantling of your perception of reality. This occurs when someone consistently tells you that what you experienced didn't happen, or happen differently than you remember. Imagine your intuition as a delicate internal compass that always points toward your highest truth. Gaslighting is like placing powerful magnets around this compass, distorting its reading and causing you to walk in circles rather than move forward on your path. This connects to the spiritual concept of inner knowing or gnosis that mystics throughout history have described. That deep, unshakable knowledge that doesn't come from external sources, but wells up from within your soul. The revelatory insight here is that your intuition isn't just a psychological function. It's actually the voice of your higher self communicating through your human experience. When someone repeatedly causes you to doubt this voice, they're not just controlling your mind, they're disconnecting you from your divine guidance system. It's crucial to distinguish between gaslighting and simple disagreements about perception. Two people can experience the same situation differently without either one trying to manipulate the other. The difference lies in intention and pattern. Does your partner acknowledge your perspective even when disagreeing, or do they consistently invalidate your reality? In relationships with healing potential, both people can learn to honor each other's perceptions and find middle ground. However, in truly toxic dynamics, one person's reality is systematically dismantled in favor of the other's narrative. This reconnection to your intuition is your soul's GPS reactivating. It represents a profound spiritual homecoming, returning to the wisdom that has always been within you. While logic has its place, ancient wisdom traditions have always honored intuitive knowing as a higher form of intelligence that connects us directly to universal truth. Sign 6. Embracing solitude over forced connection. The sixth spiritual sign is finding peace in solitude. Toxic relationships create a fear of being alone, a spiritual dependency that keeps you connected despite the harm. Partners who manipulate often use withdrawal of affection as punishment. They go cold, vanish, or act like you don't exist, teaching you to fear disconnection. You blame yourself, thinking you've ruined something perfect. But as the Instagram wisdom states, you blame yourself. You think you ruined something perfect, but they were never real to begin with. As your spirit awakens, solitude transforms from something to fear into sacred space for reconnection with yourself. You start to distinguish between loneliness and the fruitful solitude that nourishes your soul. The quiet moments you once avoided become opportunities for spiritual communion with your higher self. This shift represents a profound spiritual maturation, recognizing that no external relationship can fulfill you if you're disconnected from yourself. In sacred solitude, you can finally hear the whispers of your soul that were previously drowned out by relationship chaos. This isn't isolation, it's intentional spiritual communion with your own divine nature. Sign 7. Recognizing the cycle and refusing to participate. The final, and perhaps most profound spiritual sign is recognizing cyclical patterns in your relationship. In truly toxic relationships, especially with narcissistic individuals, these cycles follow predictable patterns: intense idealization, subtle devaluation, emotional withdrawal, and then, when you begin to pull away, renewed attention and promises of change. Consider this cycle as a spiritual labyrinth where you've been walking the same confusing paths over and over, thinking you're making progress when you're actually just repeating patterns. The moment of recognition is when you suddenly rise above the labyrinth, seeing its entire structure from a higher perspective. From this vantage point, what once seemed like a complex journey reveals itself as a carefully designed prison. This connects to the profound spiritual concept of samsara from Buddhist tradition, the wheel of suffering that keeps souls trapped in repeating patterns of pain until they awaken to the nature of the cycle itself. The revelatory insight is that recognizing unhealthy cycles isn't just psychological awareness, it's a form of spiritual liberation known as moksha, or release from bondage. Every time you refuse to participate in a familiar pattern, you're not just changing a relationship dynamic, you're literally breaking karmic chains that may have bound you for lifetimes. It's important to recognize that not all relationship cycles are toxic. Healthy relationships also have natural rhythms and patterns. The difference lies in awareness, growth, and mutual participation. In relationships with healing potential, both partners can recognize destructive cycles, take responsibility for their roles, and consciously create new patterns together. This co-creation requires both people to be self-aware and committed to growth. However, if you've attempted to bring awareness to these patterns and your partner consistently denies, deflects, or temporarily changes, only to return to the same behaviors, you may be dealing with a truly toxic dynamic that requires more than just insight to transform. When they attempt to hoover you back with declarations of love and promises of change, something fundamental has shifted. You can see the bait for what it is, not because you've become cynical, but because you've become clear. This clarity is your spirit finally reclaiming its discernment. As you recognize these signs in your own experience, here are 4 spiritual practices to support your discernment and healing journey. Relationship, healing visualization. Create a sacred space in your mind where you can meet the essence of your relationship. Visualize the patterns between you as energy cords. Some may be healthy, glowing with vibrant light, while others may appear dark or constricted. Send healing light to the troubled areas, seeing if they can be transformed. Notice which cords respond to healing energy and which remain resistant. Self-compassion. Practice. Place your hand on your heart and say, I honor my journey. I take responsibility for my choices. I offer myself compassion as I navigate this path with wisdom and clarity. Truth and boundaries. Affirmation. Each morning, affirm, I speak my truth with compassion. I set healthy boundaries with love. I create space for genuine connection in all my relationships. As we end with closing thoughts, remember, this journey isn't about pulling away from others, but rising into your highest expression. This distinction is important. Spiritual evolution doesn't necessitate ending all challenging relationships. In many cases, bringing awareness, communication, and boundaries to a relationship can transform it into a vehicle for mutual growth. Think of yourself as a serpent shedding its old skin. The process is uncomfortable, sometimes painful, and there's a vulnerability in the transition. But it's only by releasing the constricting old layers that you can emerge renewed, vibrant, and able to grow further. This connects to the spiritual concept of ego death in mystical traditions, the necessary dissolution of old identities before spiritual rebirth can occur. The profound revelation here is that relationship challenges often serve as the catalyst for your most significant spiritual evolution. What feels like heartbreak is actually your cocoon breaking open. What seems like ending is actually sacred initiation. Even difficult relationship dynamics can become doorways to your most profound healing if you approach them with spiritual awareness. Before making any major relationship decisions, consider these questions. Have I clearly communicated my needs and boundaries? Have I taken responsibility for my part in our patterns? Has my partner shown genuine willingness to grow and change? Sometimes adding light to a situation through awareness, honest communication, and shared intention can transform what seemed toxic into something healing. However, if you've consistently tried these approaches and the relationship continues to diminish your spirit, trust that your awakening is divinely timed. Your inner wisdom has decided you're ready for relationships that reflect your true worth rather than diminish it. This spiritual growth isn't just about leaving someone else. It's about returning to yourself. It's about remembering who you were before any unhealthy patterns began, before your boundaries were crossed, before your reality was questioned. That authentic self hasn't disappeared. It's been waiting patiently for you to reclaim it. If you've experienced any of these spiritual signs, share your journey in the comments below. Remember that by sharing your light, you help others find their way out of darkness. If this resonated with you, please like and subscribe for more spiritual insights on relationships, awakening, and personal transformation. Thank you for joining us on this exploration of spiritual freedom. Until next time, may your spirit continue to rise into its highest expression on your path to a better life.